Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. Happy Women's Day to all women across the country and the world. I am Tanzi Banauri. In today's bulletin, we will present top and trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Survivors of deadly Mexico kidnapping being treated at Texas hospital. US to relax COVID testing rules for travelers from China. Biden budget aims to cut deficits nearly 3 trillion over 10 years. US sanctions Iranian officials over women's rights abuses. After Taylor shooting, feds fined police discrimination. Eruption at Hawaii's Kilauea volcano stops after 61 days. TikTok push targets Biden on Alaska's huge willow oil plan. Tyre Nichols' death spurs Justice Department police review. Maker of unproven birth drug Makena to pull from US market. Fan favorite Lainey Wilson leads CMT Music Awards nominees. Women's Day events highlight gaps in gender equality. She accuses US of trying to block China's development. Ukraine First Lady Olena Zelenska in UAE amid Russia's war. Harry and Meghan's daughter Chrisent will use royal title. Netherlands tops Cuba 4-2, Panama beats Taiwan 12-5 at WBC. Mikaela Shiffrin closes in on World Cup skiing history. And USA basketball to play Greece, Germany at Abu Dhabi. Now news in detail. A road trip to Mexico for cosmetic surgery veered violently off course when 4 Americans were caught in a drug cartel shootout, leaving 2 dead and 2 held captive for days in a remote region of the Gulf Coast before they were rescued from a wood shack, officials said Tuesday. Their minivan crashed and was fired on shortly after they crossed into the border city of Matamoros on Friday as drug cartel factions tore through the streets, the region's governor said. A stray bullet also killed a Mexican woman about a block and a half away. The 4 Americans were hauled off in a pickup truck, and Mexican authorities frantically searched as the cartel moved them around, even taking them to a medical clinic to create confusion and avoid efforts to rescue them. Tamaulipas Governor Americo Villarreal said they were found Tuesday in a wooden shack guarded by a man who was arrested in a rural area east of Matamoros called Ejido Tecolote on the way to the Gulf called Baghdad Beach, according to the state's chief prosecutor, Irving Barrios. The surviving Americans were whisked back to U.S. soil on Tuesday in Brownsville, the southernmost tip of Texas and just across the border from Matamoros. The convoy of ambulances and SUVs was escorted by Mexican military, Humvees, and National Guard trucks with mounted machine guns. A relative of one of the victims said Monday that the four had traveled together from the Carolinas so one of them could get a tummy tuck surgery from a doctor in Matamoros. The governor said the wounded American, Eric Williams, had been shot in the left leg and the injury was not life-threatening. The Biden administration is preparing to relax COVID-19 testing restrictions for travelers from China as soon as Friday, according to two people familiar with the decision. The people, who were not authorized to comment publicly and spoke on the condition of anonymity, said the administration has decided to roll back the testing requirements as cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are declining in China and the US has gathered better information about the surge. The restrictions were put in place on December 28 and took effect on January 5 amid a surge in infections in China after the nation sharply eased pandemic restrictions and as US health officials expressed concerns that their Chinese counterparts were not being truthful to the world about the true number of infections and deaths. The Washington Post was first to report on Tuesday about the expected administration move. At the time, US officials also said the restriction was necessary to protect US citizens and communities because there was a lack of transparency from the Chinese government about the size of the surge or the variants that were circulating within China. As part of its response, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention earlier this year expanded genomic surveillance at several US airports, collecting voluntary samples from passengers aboard hundreds of weekly flights from China, and the testing of wastewater aboard airplanes. The traveler-based genomic surveillance program will continue to monitor travelers from China and more than 30 other countries. President Joe Biden's upcoming budget proposal aims to cut deficits by nearly $3 trillion over the next decade, according to an administration official. That deficit reduction goal is significantly higher than the $2 trillion that Biden had promised in his State of the Union address last month. It also is a sharp contrast with House Republicans, who have called for a path to a balanced budget but have yet to offer a blueprint. The White House has consistently called into question Republicans' commitment to what it considers a sustainable federal budget. Administration officials have noted that the various tax plans and other policies previously backed by GOP lawmakers would add more than $2.7 trillion to the national debt over 10 years. Biden intends to discuss his budget proposal on Thursday in Philadelphia. The official familiar with Biden's budget plan was not authorized to publicly discuss the matter before the president's official announcement and spoke on condition of anonymity on Wednesday. The US is imposing more sanctions on Iran, hitting people and firms accused of violating women's rights during nationwide anti-government protests over the treatment of young women and girls. Included in the sanctions are two prison officials, several firms that manufacture equipment for Iranian law enforcement, the commander-in-chief of the Iranian army, and others. Nationwide protests first erupted over the September 16 death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini while in the custody of Iran's morality police. She was accused of violating Iran's strict dress code for women by wearing her headscarf improperly. Those protests have continued for months. Subsequently, a series of suspected poisonings at girls' schools across the country, which sickened hundreds of students, fueled claims about the violation of women and girls' rights and prompted protest. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement that the US government remains deeply concerned that Iranian authorities continue to suppress dissent and peaceful protest, including through mass arrests, sham trials, hasty executions, the detention of journalists, and the use of sexual violence as a means of protest suppression. The US Justice Department has found Louisville police have engaged in a pattern of violating constitutional rights following an investigation prompted by the fatal police shooting of Breonna Taylor. The announcement was made Wednesday by Attorney General Merrick Garland. A Justice Department report found the Louisville, Jefferson County Metro Government and Louisville Metro Police Department engage in a pattern or practice of conduct that deprives people of their rights under the Constitution and federal law. The report said the Louisville Police Department discriminates against black people in its enforcement activities, uses excessive force, and conducts searches based on invalid warrants. It also said the department violates the rights of people engaged in protected speech, like the street protest in the city in the summer of 2020. This conduct is unacceptable. It is heartbreaking, Garland said. The sweeping probe announced in April 2021 is known as a pattern or practice investigation, examining whether there is a pattern of unconstitutional or unlawful policing inside the department. Taylor, a 26-year-old black woman, was roused from her bed by police, who came through the door using a battering ram after midnight on March 13, 2020. 3 officers fired shots after Taylor's boyfriend, fearing an intruder, shot an officer in the leg. Taylor was struck several times and died at the scene. The latest eruption at Kilaue's summit on Hawaii has paused after 61 days of volcanic activity. U.S. Geological Survey's Hawaiian Volcano Observatory scientists said Tuesday lava was no longer flowing on the crater floor of Halemaumau, where all recent volcanic activity had been confined, Hawaii News now reported. No significant changes have been observed along the volcano's rift zones. Scientists on Monday observed small oozouts of lava flowing sluggishly in the lava lake. Officials said activity diminished in the afternoon, and by Tuesday there was no active lava in the crater. USGS said the reduction in activity was related to the larger deflationary tilt drop that began February 17, a common process at Kilauea in which the ground deflates for hours or days. The drop in pressure can then cause eruptions to diminish. Kilauea began erupting again January 5 after scientists detected a glow within Halemaumau crater. The latest eruption started after a nearly month-long pause in activity. Kilauea is one of the world's most active volcanoes. A 2018 Kilauea eruption destroyed more than 700 homes. A social media campaign urging President Joe Biden to reject an oil development project on Alaska's remote North Slope has rapidly gained steam on TikTok and other platforms, reflecting the unease many young Americans feel about climate change. The Stop Willow campaign has garnered more than 50 million views and counting, and was trending in the top 10 topics on TikTok, as users voiced their concerns that Biden wouldn't stick to his campaign promises to curtail oil drilling. It's just so blatantly bad for the planet, said Hazel Thayer, a climate activist who posted TikTok videos using the Stop Willow hashtag. With all of the progress that the US government has made on climate change, it now feels like they are turning their backs by allowing Willow to go through, Thayer said. I think a lot of young people are feeling a little bit betrayed by that. At the same time, Alaska Native leaders with ties to the petroleum-rich North Slope support ConocoPhillips' Alaska's proposed Willow project. They have pushed back, saying the Willow project would bring much-needed jobs and billions of dollars in taxes and mitigation funds to the west, snow and ice-covered region nearly 600 miles from Anchorage. The Justice Department announced Wednesday that it will review the Memphis Police Department policies on use of force, de-escalation policies, and specialized units in response to the fatal beating of Tyre Nichols during an arrest. The review was requested by the city's mayor and police chief, the department said. In a separate effort, it will examine the use of specialized units around the country and produce a guide for police chiefs and mayors on their use, according to the announcement. In the wake of Tyre Nichols' tragic death, the Justice Department has heard from police chiefs across the country who are assessing the use of specialized units and where used, appropriate management. oversight and accountability for such units, said Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta. The U.S. Justice Department has previously opened a civil rights investigation into Nichols' death. The city on Wednesday also plans to release about 20 hours of video and audio related to the arrest of the 29-year-old motorist who died January 10, 3 days after his violent arrest. It will add to the already public footage from police body cameras and a surveillance camera that has given the world a detailed look at the police pummeling Nichols. The maker of an unproven drug intended to prevent premature birth says it will voluntarily remove the product from the US after regulators signaled plans to follow through on a long-delayed effort to force it from the market. The drug Makena is a synthetic version of the hormone progesterone, which is needed to maintain a pregnancy. It is the only drug with FDA approval to reduce the risk of premature birth. The removal announcement Tuesday from Covis Pharma comes roughly 4 years after Makena failed to show a benefit in helping mothers carry pregnancies to term. Since then, the Food and Drug Administration has been moving to get the drug off the market, though Covis has repeatedly appealed for more time to conduct additional research. The injectable drug has become a symbol for the challenges the FDA faces to withdraw a medication when the manufacturer won't do so voluntarily. Indeed, the timing of the drug's removal remains uncertain. Covis, based in Switzerland, said in its release that FDA regulators rejected its proposal to wind down the drug's use over several months. The company said that extended off-ramp would give women who are still receiving the drug time to finish their course of treatment, which involves weekly injections starting after 16 weeks of pregnancy. Country singer Lainey Wilson is a fan favorite at this year's CMT Music Awards, where she is the leading nominee including for Video of the Year. The Hurt Like a Truck singer earned 4 nominations when nominees were announced Wednesday ahead of the April 2 show airing on CBS. Other leading nominees including Cody Johnson, CMT co-host Ken Brown and first-time nominee Jelly Roll, who all have 3 nominations each. Brown and Kelsey Ballerini returned to host the show from Austin, Texas. There are 16 nominees for the show's top prize, Video of the Year, a category that Carrie Underwood holds the record in with 25 awards. She is nominated again for her video Hit My Heart and will also perform. The winners will be selected by fan voting, which is open now at vote.cmt.com. Now it's time for global updates. Demonstrations, conferences, and artistic events around the world Wednesday marked International Women's Day, an annual observance established to recognize women and to demand equality for half of the planet's population. While activists in some parts of the planet noted advances, repression in countries such as Afghanistan and Iran, and the large numbers of women and girls who experience sexual assaults and domestic violence worldwide, highlighted the ongoing struggle to secure women's rights. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres noted this week that women's rights were abused, threatened, and violated around the world, and gender equality won't be achieved for 300 years given the current pace of change. Progress on over decades is vanishing because the patriarchy is fighting back, Guterres said. Even in countries that have pioneered advances for women, there have been recent setbacks for the feminist cause. This is the first International Women's Day since the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion last year, and many states adopted restrictions on abortion. President Xi Jinping accused Washington this week of trying to isolate his country and hold back its development. That reflects the ruling Communist Party's growing frustration that its pursuit of prosperity and global influence is threatened by US restrictions on access to technology, its support for Taiwan, and other moves seen by Beijing as hostile. Xi, China's most powerful leader in decades, tries to appear to be above problems and usually makes blandly positive public comments that made his complaint Monday all the more striking. She said a US-led campaign of containment and suppression of China has brought unprecedented severe challenges. He called on the public to dare to fight. On Tuesday, Foreign Minister Qin Gang sharpened the warning, saying Washington faces possible conflict and confrontation if it fails to change course. China is hardly the only government to fume at Washington's dominance of global strategic and economic affairs. But Chinese leaders see the United States as making extra effort to thwart Beijing as a challenger for regional and possibly global leadership. The ruling party wants to restore China's historic role as a political and cultural leader, raise incomes by transforming the country into an inventor of technology, and unite what it considers the Chinese motherland by taking control of Taiwan, the self-ruled island democracy that Beijing claims as part of its territory. Beijing sees those as positive goals, but American officials see them as threats. They say Chinese development plans are based, at least in part, on stealing or pressuring foreign companies to hand over technology. Some warn Chinese competition might erode US industrial dominance and incomes. Ukraine's First Lady on Wednesday offered spirited support to her nation's people while visiting the United Arab Emirates, a country that still remains open to Russia despite Western sanctions. Olena Zelenska described her role and that of other First Ladies and gentlemen in the world as a real power while speaking before a packed ballroom on International Women's Day. She also applauded the work of the average Ukrainian amid the ongoing war. "We are a force and we can continue to change the world," Zelenska said at the Forbes 30 by 50 summit via a translator. Zelenska's trip to the United Arab Emirates capital comes as the UAE remains one of the few direct routes out of Moscow for both people fleeing conscription and for the wealthy who want to park their money in a nation with access to Western financial markets. Already, the US Treasury has expressed concerns with the Russian money flowing into Dubai's red-hot real estate market. Meanwhile, the super yachts of Russian oligarchs also have repeatedly turned up in the Emirates since the start of Moscow's war on Ukraine last year. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan announced Wednesday that their daughter had been christened in a private ceremony in California, publicly calling her a princess and revealing for the first time that they will use royal titles for their children. Princess Lilibet Diana, who turns 2 in June, was baptized on Friday by the Archbishop of Los Angeles, the Reverend John Taylor, Harry and Meghan said in a statement. Lilibet's title and that of her brother Archie, who will be 4 in May, will be updated on the Buckingham Palace website later. The announcement marked the first time that the children's titles had been used in public. The question of the children's titles took center stage 2 years ago during Harry and Meghan's television interview with Oprah Winfrey. Meghan, who is biracial, said that when she was pregnant with Archie, they, presumably the palace, were saying they didn't want him to be a prince, which would be different from protocol. Meghan suggested that this was because Archie was the royal family's first member of color and would have marked the first time a royal grandchild wasn't given the same title as the other grandchildren. At the time, royal experts said Meghan's comments appeared to be based on a misunderstanding of the way royal titles are conferred. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,440.64. The NYSE Composite is increased by 1.62 points or 0.01%. Tokyo stock close price is 28,444.19. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 135.03 points or 0.48%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,283.2479. The Shanghai Composite Index is decreased by 1.85 points or 0.06%. Hong Kong stock close price is 20,051.25. The Hang Seng Index is decreased by 483.23 points or 2.35%. Bombay stock close price is 60,348.09. The Sensex index is increased by 123.63 points or 0.21%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. The 20-team World Baseball Classic got underway after a 6-year absence, with Panama defeating Taiwan 12-5 for its first win in tournament history and the Netherlands beating Cuba 4-2 as Didi Gregorius drove in the tying run and scored the go-ahead run. Play in Group B begins on Thursday in Tokyo, with South Korea playing Australia and host Japan, led by Angels star Shohei Ohtani, up against China. Play in Group C and D begins Saturday in Phoenix and Miami. The United States won the last tournament in 2017 and is among the favorites, with the Dominican Republic and Japan. Japan has won it twice and the Dominicans once. This is the first WBC in which MLB players are eligible to play for Cuba. Former MLB player Ines Cespedes, who played for Cuba in the event in 2009, hit .458 in that tournament and began his MLB career 3 years later with the Oakland Athletics. He played in part of 8 seasons with Oakland, Boston, Detroit, and the New York Mets. History beckons for Mikaela Shiffrin on Friday when the American skier competes in one of her best events. Shiffrin is seeking a record-tying 86th win on the World Cup skiing circuit, a number that would equal Swedish great Ingemar Stenmark's mark from the 1970s and 80s. Shiffrin earned win number 85 6 weeks ago. She had 3 chances to match Stenmark's record last week, but those were all speed races, not Shiffrin's specialty. On Friday, Shiffrin will again try to make history in a giant slalom in Sweden. That will be followed by a slalom on Saturday. Shiffrin has won 19 World Cup giant slaloms and 52 slaloms in her career, along with an Olympic gold medal in each. Stenmark has said he does not plan to be in preferring to watch on television, but he gave Shiffrin an enthusiastic endorsement in a recent interview with the Associated Press. USA Basketball will play a pair of games in Abu Dhabi this summer on its way to the World Cup in the Philippines. The federation announced an agreement with Abu Dhabi's Department of Culture and Tourism on Wednesday, and as part of that deal, the US will bring Germany and Greece there for games in August. The US will host the 3-game series, and it will mark the first time that the men's national team will play in the United Arab Emirates. The Americans will play Greece on August 18 and Germany on August 20. Germany and Greece will play there on August 19. The US is ranked number 2 in the world by FIBA, with Greece number 9 and Germany number 11. The Americans will announce their World Cup roster this summer before gathering in Las Vegas for training camp under coach Steve Kerr of Golden State and assistants Eric Spoelstra of Miami, Tyronn Lue of the Los Angeles Clippers, and Mark Few of Gonzaga. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest update. Millennium TV US and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia available with the Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.